We don't hit home runs in this pod. We work station to station. I'm back with my battery mate as always, Dustin, and the righty from the pen, Rob, is in to discuss the, I guess, last week and a half of Jays happenings. Lots of stuff happening this afternoon. The Jays, I guess, polished off a nice series loss against the Brewers. And Dustin, it seems like the Jays are, I don't know, that 500 level seems to be, getting to that level seems to be hard to obtain for them.
It definitely is elusive, 500. They're inching closer in recent times here, but, you know, I'm kind of two minds about it. I've been thinking about this a little bit over the last few weeks, especially in the last little while since they've kind of improved, but not necessarily, you know, been world beaters. You know, they're still the same team. They've just had a little more luck and maybe been able to come through a little bit. But, you know, it's sort of this idea of, you know, if they can go on a run and get back in it and be serious contenders, then that's good. If they fall off and, you know, are sellers maybe, or soft sellers, and, you know, or at least kind of have some idea that there's going to be change or something, then there can be some good that comes out of that. But I'm kind of scared that they're going to just be kind of mid and maybe get the playoffs again, maybe like a wild card, and be one and out again. And it's just like the same story. So I'm afraid that we're just kind of treading water, and that's almost the worst of all the worlds.
So, I mean, everybody's really caught up about them being at 500 in the last little while. And does it really matter if you're 3 games under 500, 2 games under 500, or 500? I mean, is that going to get them a playoff spot? I think the wins is what you want, but a 500 mark, I don't think that's going to guarantee them even a spot in the wild card. And if it does, if they're even going to get out of the wild card. So, I mean, yes, it's important to win games. It's a nice thing to have as the Jays. You know, they're 500, but I don't think whether you're 3, 2, 1 games under 500, 500, or 1 or 2 games above 500, I don't see how much of a difference that really is. They need to just win solid games and be like competitive with New York and Baltimore, which I don't think they're going to get there.
I mean, no, I mean, that's right. I mean, 500 is 500. And, you know, while they've been jumping over a few teams in the wild card race, we're only, 3 games out of that race right now, with only Minnesota and Boston ahead of us. I mean, you do a little better, you go on a little bit of a run here, and you're in it. I mean, it's not that far away, but that's kind of my worry, is that we're going to be, in the race at the trade deadline, but not good enough to really do anything. We don't sell the assets that we have and get what we can for them, and we end up maybe not making the playoffs, just being out, a game out or something. And it's like, I don't know. It's almost like I said, I'm just worried about being that middle of the road. I kind of not hoped for a collapse, but I was kind of in that mindset lately. And then they split against Baltimore, and they won that series against Oakland. And it's like, okay, well, they're looking okay. And they brought up Spencer Horwitz, and they're playing him, and it's looking all right. But
that's what we see with the team, right? It's like 1 step forward and then 2 steps back. So splitting against Baltimore, yeah, that's great. Baltimore's a great team. It's in your division. I mean, sweeping a 3-game series is hard. Sweeping a 4-game series is hard for any team, even if you are Baltimore. So, the Jays coming out 1 win, what is good, 2 was better. So, okay, that was good. Oakland, I mean, again, like I said before, it's hard to sweep a team. So to sweep Oakland at Oakland is difficult. So you took 2 out of 3. But again, you're supposed to do that. After it's all said and done, you're still under 500. You're still one step forward because it's like, okay, we have a win. Your pitching is great, but offense is still there. You're still not scoring runs with runners in scoring position. So you're like Dustin said, right in the middle of the pack. But that's not going to do anything. You either need a full out collapse and just say, okay, trade a couple of guys and almost do another rebuild, or you need to go on a tear and get your 500, get your 2 games over, 3 games over, 5 games over, 10 games over. But is that realistic? Are the Jays going to get 10 games over 500? I don't think so. So you're stuck right in the middle. To get a wild card spot that the history has shown that the wild card game is just 2 extra games to make us suffer through and make us more angry as fans because they lose.
So I'm not going to disagree with you, Rob, but I think there are certain benchmarks, and I'm not going to suggest that 500 is a great benchmark, but I think getting to a 500 record is like, well, that's something to build on. You could look at adding, potential other batters for a stretch drive, and I don't know. I think baseball, there's a lot of there's a huge mental aspect about it, and I think there probably is a difference when you show up to the clubhouse on the road and you're at 35 and 34 rather than 32 and 34, right? Or 33 and 35, which the Jays are right now. So I think there might be some kind of just mental stuff to it, and that we're in a better place than we were. And now I totally agree with Dustin in terms of like this team is super mid. It does seem to have some strengths, but you can't really win games with pitching. You can kind of just keep yourself in there and hope the bats come through. And I think the most maddening thing, last week when they played the Orioles, they got their doors blown off the first 2 games. Like it looked like they were going to get swept, right? I think we can all agree on that. And then game number 3, which I actually attended, it was a bit of a usual Jays frustrating game in which some guys get on, there's some extra base hits, but doesn't really amount to much. In the end, it was a walk-off victory. But as Rob, as you've touched on before, as many people have agreed on, it was kind of handed to the Jays, right? And then, of course, the Jays go on and win the 4th game. So they split the series. And so Thursday night, you're sitting there, we're all sitting there, and we're kind of thinking, okay, maybe there is something here, because there was a caller on one of the Jays talks last week, and basically he was going through all the records. So, we all know that they were terrible against the AL East last year, but the Jays are like, they split series, like they've won a series against the Yankees, like against their AL East opponents. They're okay. But what they haven't done is the AL Central seems to be, batting them aside this year, which probably doesn't bode well for this weekend against Cleveland. But I don't know, 500 I think is just like a benchmark that they can build on, and go from there.
Like, I don't disagree with that. Like, you have to aim for something, and I know they're talking, like you got to do baby steps at a time. So it's like, okay, go in and win the next game, and maybe you strive to be, okay, let's get to 500, and then let's work from there. The thing is, they're running out of time. I know we're halfway through, but given what we're seeing, so to say 500, if they think that's the end goal, which is kind of what there's more emphasis on them saying, well, let's get to 500. I think it's just words, and to get there, yes, it's good, but I don't think it really matters if they're 1 game under 500 or 1 game over 500. Because even if you get 500 and you're 1 over, it's like, oh great, they're 1 game over 500, but they're still in the 4th spot in the division.
Well, I don't think 500 is the end goal, but I mean, it's a stepstone to being better, right? You get to 500, the next step is to get back into a wild card spot, right? That's the next goal. So, I mean, look, we'll find out here in the back half of June. As you mentioned, Cleveland's coming to town. Then we got Baltimore or Boston, then Cleveland and Boston again, and then New York. I mean, that's a gauntlet that, you know, if they can get to 500 and beyond playing those teams, then we got something. But yeah, I think by June 30th, we're going to have a really good idea of where the trade deadline's going.
And do you think they're going to get to 500 after these series? Because yeah, they got Cleveland, Boston.
I don't
Cleveland,
know. We'll see.
Boston.
Boston's not great.
Here's the thing, like, I have a feeling, Dustin. So we're sitting here on the evening of June 12th. I have a feeling, you know, you said that we're gonna know a lot more on June 30th. I'm not sure we are gonna. I think it's gonna be the same thing. We're gonna be like hovering around 500. You know, there's gonna be some game, like, you know, maybe they win. Maybe they win one of the series against maybe Cleveland or Boston or whatever, and we're gonna be like, well, you know, there's something here, and it's just kind of, we're just edging it along, and as long as the team is, I don't know, within 5 games of the wild card, like I think people in terms of management and coach and the coaching are probably going to still be, you know, talking positively, right, and trying to encourage and go forward and whatnot. Like, they're only 3 games back of the wild card now, but yeah, I'm not sure we are going to know much more. If we're deciding that this team is mid, I think this is exactly what we're going to get, you know, and we're probably going to be, I'm going to guess 2 games under 500, just like they are now at the end of June.
I mean, fair enough. I mean, that's I wouldn't be surprised at all if that were the case.
All right. So last week we had, we had the Orioles series start the week, a little bit of positivity, and then the Blue Jays news started rolling in. The first piece of news that we got was that Alek Manoah does need an elbow procedure on his elbow, and we don't know if it's going to be TJ or if it's just a brace, but I think we were all pretty much correct in that we were expecting doom and gloom news from that, and that's what we got. So I guess we won't be seeing Alek Manoah for at least 12 months.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends kind of on exactly the surgery that he's going to get. You know, a full Tommy John is probably at least 12, if not more. Like, full Tommy John probably means he misses most of next season as well. If he just gets the support brace, that's somewhere between 9 and 12 months, depending on, you know, recovery and how his body reacts, etc. So we could see him kind of mid-year next year, if that's what he needs. Either way, yeah, it's not good, and it's a shame that, you know, everything that happened over the last 2 years, you know, his success and then his kind of let's say, you know, failure and bouncing back this year. You know, I mean, at least he got that. At least he got that kind of few games to show us what he could be. And, you know, I'm hopeful that there's still time for him to come back and be what, you know, he was promising here in these last few outings.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that one of their 5 starters is out and Tommy John is never good. But I don't think he was a make or break pitcher this year. I mean, he didn't come in till later in the season. So is he going to be that missed? I mean, he wasn't there earlier in the season. Yariel Rodriguez was taken over. Bowden Francis was taken over. So it's just the same as what we saw earlier this season. It's unfortunate that he's gone, but I don't think I'm going to miss him too much. Hopefully the recovery is good and he comes back better and stronger and moving forward. Hopefully it'll be good. But as of right now, I'm like the team is not doing well with or without Manoa. He was not a game changer. So sad, but kind of indifferent that he's not there.
Well, I did think that he had some really good outings, which, as you touched on, Dustin, I think he did show what he is capable of. We weren't surprised that Tommy John, we weren't surprised that a significant elbow surgery was he was or what is required, but most pitchers seem to have some kind of Tommy John at some point in their career. So, you know, he's younger, get it done. Hopefully he can come back. And, you know, the Jays probably are going to need him as their pitching staff is a bit older and they're going to need someone like Manoa who's not really going to cost them a whole lot and hopefully can pitch well, eat up some innings. I guess not in 2025, but maybe in 2026.
Well, I was just going to say on the last point is that the promise with Manoa was that, he's like the next generation of somebody that we could have built around, right? I mean, if we're talking about maybe not a rebuild, but sort of the next generation of the core players once, we move on from, Gosman and Bassett, we'll still have obviously Barrios for a little while and Kikuchi's leaving this year. So, I mean, Manoa would have been somebody that we could kind of hopefully bounce back and next 2 years be, that person that we saw a couple years ago when he was a Cy Young sort of candidate. So it's a shame that it's happening. It's going to delay that, but I still think that promise is there.
Definitely. Still young. And we will wait to see when Manoa, I guess, we'll wait to see when he gets back pitching and then eventually, hopefully, back with the Jays. Now, late last week, also on Thursday, Shai Davidi reported that Spencer Horowitz was with the team in Oakland. And he was actually on the radio and was being interviewed by Blair and Barker, and they were questioning him on who is going to go out. And he wouldn't confirm because he wasn't 100% sure whether it was going to be Vogelbach or Biggio. It did end up being Cavan Biggio, who was DFA'd. Due to his tenure in the major leagues, he did have the option of refusing to be sent down, which he did. And so he was subsequently DFA'd. Horowitz took a spot on the roster. We'll talk about Horowitz in a moment, but just want to talk a little bit about Cavan Biggio. He ends up getting traded actually earlier today, so I guess we're quite timely with this episode. Basically, he was traded with some cash for a minor league pitcher over to the Dodgers, which is going to be a great fit for him. But Dustin, let's just close the book on Cavan Biggio's time with the Jays.
I think that Biggio is kind of he was part of the three sort of sons of the major leaguers, right? That we saw coming up with Bo and Vladdy. He was, whether you kind of think he's of their caliber or not, which probably isn't, but he was sort of part of that, let's say, new generation, the new promise and all that jazz that was going on at that time. And I think his departure here kind of is the first domino in the sort of transition to the new generation, the next Blue Jays, team. That who are we going to come up? I mean, I've seen some memes on Twitter or whatever about the showing Biggio and Bo and Vladdy, and then comparing that now to Schneider and Horowitz and Clement. It is kind of a little bit of a, I don't know, a sad thing or just kind of a marker of moving on from that time and that team. I'm glad to see him land with the Dodgers. I think that's a great fit for him. They need somebody like him. He'll be great off the bench for them. And, I'll be, it'll give me a reason to cheer for the Dodgers in in the World Series when they get there.
Yeah, I mean, to chime in on that, yeah, I mean, I agree. Kind of sad to see him go, just because he was part of that core with Vladdy and Bo. Um, but there was no room for him, and he was always rumored to be traded, even a couple of years ago, when they were bringing up some other guys, and who's going to play second, is he going to play third, first, that super utility player that he is. So, again, I wasn't too invested in him. I mean, he was good when he played. I feel bad for the guy because he didn't get enough playing time, and I think when given the opportunity for him to play, um, he would be able to. He would come through, but yeah, he just wasn't getting that playing time, and just wasn't really contributing at this point with a team that's already struggling. So I'm glad that he's going to LA. Like Dustin said, kind of gives me a bit more of an incentive to say, all right, well, that's kind of worth maybe rooting for them now, because you got a couple of former Jays on that team, possibly a third Jay with Bo, because that there were some rumors floating around with him being traded to LA as well. But maybe this is the first domino to fall, and who sees what else, and maybe like that core of the three of these guys is maybe going to be now phased out, and for the new core, which is what you said, Clement, Schneider, and Horwitz.
Well, Rob, I think there's definitely something to be said about the amount of playing time. And just before the show, I was looking up Biggio's numbers. So, in terms of this year, he was 0.4 wins above replacement, 200 average, 2 home runs, a 614 OPS, and an OPS plus of 80, which, doesn't sound great. But I did note that his highest WAR that he's ever had in his career was in 2019, his rookie year, when he was a 3.0 WAR. And that year he had the highest amount of bats he's ever had in his career with 430. And he actually finished as a finalist in the AL Rookie of the Year. And I think at least they listed Vladdy's name, and I don't know if in terms of how that all fell, but it seemed like Biggio came on and was, at least initially, what we hoped he would be in terms of that son of a former great major leaguer, but he just wasn't able to sustain that, and wasn't able to get the at-bats, and really wasn't productive enough to really justify them.
No, he was good when he got the chance to play, and I think I saw some people saying as much, in various places around Blue Jays sort of commentary land, that maybe he would have been better served if he had a regular spot in the lineup, and he was able to put together that kind of season, like you're saying. He also had a pretty good year in the COVID shortened season, but he was just, I think he was just very streaky, and just there was always maybe a better option, or somebody with more promise or whatever that was on the roster that could be put in front of him. It is something that I saw a lot too, that he was kind of a beloved figure, and not only in the clubhouse, but it seemed like a lot of the media figures seemed to like him. He was kind of a professional dude, and there's a lot of that kind of talk around him, which says a lot about his character. And so I think, yeah, it's a little bit of a shame that he couldn't have come through a little bit more on his promise. But he'll land on his feet, and I'll be looking forward to see him have success with the Dodgers, because it always seems to be the case that somebody goes somewhere else and they just have a season and a half that they never had with the Jays.
Well, let me ask you, Dustin, if the Jays don't re-sign Kevin Kiermaier, does Cavan Biggio get more games at second base? Because there seems to be kind of like a domino where because Varsho isn't in center field, he gets pushed to left field. And then you have, of course, Davis Schneider, who everyone wanted him to play and has now justified his playing time. It seems like there's just kind of a couple players that in terms of dominoes that were ahead of him. And I wonder if Kevin Kiermaier's not on this team, does Dalton Varsho regularly patrol center field, and then left field is kind of like a Davis Schneider or whoever else they want to throw out there kind of thing, right? And then Davis Schneider, like, then you don't have Davis Schneider competing for Cavan Biggio's second base spot, even though Davis Schneider has played much more in left field than he has at second base. I kind of wonder, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's possible. I think that's certainly a possibility. I mean, you do have kind of the success that Spencer Horwitz is having, and his sort of, well, I mean, at the time, I guess at the beginning of the year, Spencer Horwitz was a first baseman. I mean, just to transition to him and his call up, I think that, it says a lot about what they thought about Cavan Biggio as a regular player at second base, that they put Spencer Horwitz at second, played him there, tried to give him that sort of pathway to the majors, because, his first base DH spot, he's probably not the kind of player at that position that's going to be, valuable, or he's always going to have somebody ahead of him. But I mean, at second base, I mean, Spencer Horwitz is, a great second baseman. I mean, if he can put together like a 110, 120 OPS plus kind of second base career and be sort of, what's it called? Like, be serviceable at second defensively. That's great. And I'd probably rather have that than Cavan Biggio, to be honest. I don't know. Cavan's got a lot more flexibility in terms of the other positions he can play, but right now this team needs offense, and Spencer Horwitz is at least in the last few games he's been providing it. I mean, he was a catalyst today, along with Schneider and Clement. They started that ninth inning rally, and he looks a lot better in the leadoff spot as well. His ability to get on base, and he's got a little bit more speed. Well, he doesn't have a little more speed, but he's just a little bit more of the kind of leadoff hitter that can get something started and get on base. I don't know that Cavan would have necessarily survived that even if Kiermaier was not on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was too many Cavan Biggio type players on that team. Like Schneider, versatility, IKF, versatile player, Biggio, versatile player, playing at different positions, Horwitz at different positions. So how many of those guys can you really have? And then he just, there wasn't room for him anymore. And his time was just up. So off he goes. Horwitz, I mean, hopefully, I've never been a fan of multiple utility players on a team. I think you should just have your one guy sticking to your one position. And hopefully Horwitz will be their everyday second baseman, and the odd time maybe you throw him out first to give Vladdy a break. But hopefully Horwitz can come up, and he's proven so far that he's able to put the bat on the ball and put the ball in play, and hopefully he's just warming up, and we'll see bigger and better things from him.
Well, Horwitz looks like a major leaguer. Do you know what I mean? Like, Addison Barger came up, and I love the enthusiasm, but not sure he's a major leaguer long term. Maybe it's possible. Well, he'll need a lot more time. But Spencer Horwitz comes up. He's already got 7 hits, hitting .389, and his OPS already is .920. So obviously very small sample size, but I think based on what we saw last year as well as this year, like I think this guy he's gonna get hits, he's gonna get on base. Probably not gonna have a lot of power, which that this team could use some. But the biggest surprise for me was when they talked about in that same Shai Davidi interview, was that him playing second base. I did not know that at all. I did not know they played him there. I did not know that he was, I guess, considered to be there. And he, from what I've seen so far, like he doesn't look out of place at all. Um, I think this is a pleasant surprise that they have someone that can play this additional position. Now, we talk about who's coming up in the pipeline. Like Arelvis Martinez was supposed to be moved to second base, so I don't know where that leaves him right now. If they're gonna slot Horowitz in there,
he's still a ways away. So I'm not worried about that.
But in terms of your the carousel of players and moving them around, Rob, I don't see that changing. Unfortunately, it just seems to be the way this team is, and maybe that's why this team is mid. Is that they just have kind of all of these utility players that are all kind of just moving around, and no single player is good enough to play, certain positions. Like they don't have, and maybe Horowitz will nail down that second baseman's job, and we'll see IKF regularly at third, but you have then you got Springer's age, and then Kiermaier's in and out, and it's just like this, it's like musical chairs and the carousel all, jammed into one.
Yeah, I mean they're trying to patch up the leaky holes that with what they've got, and look, I agree with you. Spencer Horwitz probably belongs in the major leagues, and I wouldn't be surprised, assuming that he does kind of show a serviceable, second baseman ability, that he'll stick. And that's good. I mean, we want to see guys come up, and we want to see that kind of new core of players come up. I just don't know if this is the core that you want to ride with. I think a lot of what we're talking about, in terms of the midness of the guys coming up, and like Arelvis Martinez, yeah, like he's looking okay with the bat and maybe close to ready from that perspective, but he's nowhere near ready. As Rob was suggesting, he's nowhere near ready defensively, and that's probably why he hasn't been called up, or and why they're giving Spencer Horwitz sort of that opportunity to say, maybe you can help the team. But I think what I was going to say is that speaks to the sort of lack of this front office's ability to draft and develop position players. I mean, even pitchers. I mean, a lot of the successful pitchers that they've got have been acquired or, signed in free agency. So I think it's just like a systemic thing that we need a change at the top. I know we've been talking about that a lot lately, and there's, them having some success here has kind of tamped down those conversations, but I'm still feeling that. And I think that it sucks that, the draft is mid-season in the MLB, because man, I don't want Ross Atkins' team drafting this year. I want that's their weakness so far. They just haven't been able to build a team that can constantly supply the major league roster with new blood and have surprises. I mean, we've got a few here, in Schneider and a couple other guys that have come up, but there's just not been a whole lot, and it's not very impressive. I need a change. I need something new on that front.
Yeah, they draft mids, man. That's what they do. Like that's kind of what they're known for, is they draft low ceiling, players that are probably more certain to be major leaguers, but just very low ceiling players. So essentially what you have said, it's a mid. These are a lot of mids, and that's why we have a mid team.
True.
All right, so Saturday, Kevin Gausman is on the hill for the Jays, and he throws a complete game shutout, which is the first of his career. I wanted to ask you guys, does he have any prior complete games? Trivia question.
I think he has complete games. I don't think he has a complete game shutout. I don't think he has that many complete games either, which is surprising because I mean I thought he would have had a few of those complete games, a lot more under his belt. But good for him. I'm glad to see the Jays did something right by signing him, and I was always a fan. I think they tried to sign him a few years ago and didn't pan out, and when they finally did, I was happy when he came. So good on him. Hope to see more of those.
Well, he does have one prior complete game, 3-1 win on July 13th, 2014. But this was a game called due to rain after 5 innings. So he was credited with a complete game, right? He didn't actually pitch a complete game. He also completed 9 innings of shutout in May 15th, 2018. He was with the Orioles at the time. But that game they didn't win. The A's went on to win in 12 innings. So this is like truly this was his first complete game shutout. So I thought that was kind of interesting that like he does have a complete game that he's credited with, even though it's not actually 9 innings pitched.
Yeah, some technicalities, but I mean this one was earned. It's definitely a true notch on the belt. He looked dominant out there, and it's good to see. I mean, not much to say other than that's the Cavan Gausman that we know, and I'm hoping that that just means like the rest of the season is going to be the same. Maybe not complete games, but just giving the chance to win, and it came at a good time too, based on the next day was going to be a bullpen day, where Bowden Francis couldn't start, but he's not expected to put in a whole lot, and maybe Trevor Richards would take a few, and not only Cavan Gausman having the complete game, but Bassett going I think 8 innings the game before just really saved that bullpen for that game, and so that was great, and that's kind of what they needed at that time.
Dustin, do you think that he still would have been allowed to pitch that long without that looming bullpen day the next day?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't know if that was necessarily the reason why they let him go out there. I think he had the shutout going. He had a pitch count that was reasonable, and they let him go. He was feeling good. Yeah, I don't think that they make decisions from that perspective.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think, especially with John Schneider and the way he manages, which I'm starting to become very agitated with that now. But I think he was just pitching a good game, and they just let him go because he was on to something big, and he just happened to throw a good game prior to a game that was probably going to be a bullpen game. So I don't think John Schneider was that bright anyway to be like, oh, go out there and go pitch a 9-inning shutouts because the next day we need our relievers. Nah, I think it was just the way it worked out.
Well, no, and I'm not saying that was the plan, right? But I'm wondering, in the 7th, 8th inning, and I'm sure obviously the pitch count is taken into account, but it sounds like you guys both agree that this was, they used their eyes and they made a sensible decision. They weren't, maybe they threw away the spreadsheets on Saturday, or maybe they got destroyed or something. They couldn't reference them.
They didn't look at the analytics.
They're like, they didn't know what to do. They just let him go, right? Let him finish it.
I think Nate Pearson was warming up anyway, because it was like, well, if his pitch count, because I think he was pitching close to 100, so I think if his pitch count started to get to like 115, 120, and things were kind of starting to slip away, then they probably would have pulled him, but he was able to close it. So I'm glad they left him in there because you don't see that very often. And I think they actually went with their eyes and said, "Oh, this guy's pitching a gem, so let's just leave him in there," as opposed to pulling him because they go, analytics say that a left-handed batter is coming up, and it's like, yeah, you can't look at that all the time. The analytics, that is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I, I think the analytics conversation, while deserved to a certain degree, is maybe a little bit overblown. I think that, you know, this team does, or at least John Schneider does have some leeway to make his own decisions, and it is what it is. I think he's not going to make that kind of call, to win a 3-0 game. I don't know. It seemed like just an obvious move to let him go out there again. Especially after probably, I think he went up to him and asked him, hey, how you doing? You want to go out again? And I'm sure Gosman said, yeah. And it all worked out. So.
All right. That series in Oakland was the Blue Jays' last ever, at least as it stands, in that stadium. I wondered if you guys have any memories of the Jays playing in Oakland that you wanted to touch on. I know I have one in particular.
No, go ahead. I mean,
yeah, I don't. I mean, I always think of Oakland. I mean, this might sound, I don't know, a little bit weird, but I mean, I always liked when the Jays played Oakland because I always liked those colors together on the field. I know that sounds kind of ridiculous, and it's not going to change the field, where they were playing. I mean, I don't have any memories other than, the 92 or 93 series when they played Oakland, and but as for that specific ballpark, nothing really triggers for me.
Rob, you touched on it briefly there. 1992 playoffs. Robbie Alomar hits the home run against Dennis Eckersley, and I remember that home run. I remember we were living in London at the time. We were watching on TV because we watched pretty much every Blue Jays game, and that home run propelled them to win that series. But it also seemed to like they always had this problem, like they could never beat the A's, right? Because the A's were so good back in those days, right? And that seemed to get kind of the monkey off the back, and kind of gave everyone confidence. It's like, yeah, we can beat this team, right? Like we just need to perform, right? And that home run, I think, in some ways, I think that home run was franchise changing, and I think that home run's why Roberto Alomar is in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think
memory.
that home run gets maybe overshadowed by, the Joe Carter home run, in terms of playoff home runs by the Jays, but that one was definitely a memorable one, and as soon as you kind of mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, obviously. So yeah, I think it's a shame that stadium and that team is moving on. I mean, that stadium's a little bit of a, from what I understand, I've never been there, but it's a little bit of a kind of a rat infested,
it's a whole
shithole.
I've taken a train. I got on a train in Oakland to head down to Los Angeles a few pre-COVID, like I don't know, a few years prior to COVID, and the train went right by that stadium, and it looks like a prison. It was awful.
Yeah,
awful place.
No, and yeah. So I mean, maybe it's good that they're at least moving on from the stadium, but it sucks that it sucks always when a city loses a team, especially a team with that much history.
And didn't they lose? Yeah, they lost their basketball team because they went to San Francisco. They lost their football team.
Yeah, not good in Oakland land, but so yeah, as far as I understand, they're going to be in like Sacramento for a couple of years, and then possibly Vegas. I think that's the
Possibly.
plan right now? Or
That needs to be bolded because Vegas is not a certainty either. Like they don't.
No.
The A's are moving on. Like the A's are leaving the Coliseum or Ricky Henderson Field or whatever they're calling it, but they're moving on because they couldn't come to an agreement on a lease with that stadium with the city. Like they're gonna go to Sacramento now, but they'd like to go to Vegas, but the owner of the A's is a complete disaster, and I'm not. From what I've heard of people in the know, nobody seems to think that this is a certainty at all, and there's a huge hurdle to pass over, which is public funding for a baseball stadium in Vegas.
Yeah, I know that it's certainly not a set in stone. Well, one thing's certain, they're going to be in Sacramento next year and probably for the next 2 or 3 years after that. And I heard also that they're not going to be like the Sacramento A's. They're just going to be, what are they going to be? They're going to be something like the A's.
Were they just going to go? Yeah, I thought they were just going to go with the Athletics because I was thinking about it. Yeah, like I don't think they're going to be like the Sacramento Athletics.
It's like a men's league team, Dustin.
I know.
We played against the Athletics. We played against
Toronto
the Athletics.
Blue Jays against the Athletics.
The Athletics, right? They were a tough team actually too. But all right, on Saturday in the Oakland series, a streak was snapped, Dustin. A streak of not scoring in the first inning, which in Major League history was actually second all time. And they got up as high as 29 straight games before Saturday rolled around, and they managed to get one across the board.
It is quite a unique streak. I'm sure it's not something that the team is very proud of. But it is kind of maybe an oddity. I don't know if it says a lot about the team necessarily. Maybe just that their top three players that they've been playing in those spots haven't been doing very well, and even after changing them up, they didn't do very well in the top three spots. But yeah, that is a weird streak. I kind of I was joking around on Twitter that I kind of wanted them to break the record. I kind of wanted to just have that weird kind of oddity happen, because I don't necessarily, like I said, think that it means much. But it is something. It's a long time to go without scoring in the first inning.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get that stat, and I don't understand what the big deal was of it. I mean, you don't score in the first inning, like, so what? It's a 9-inning game. Like, everybody's still kind of getting warmed up, and so I don't know the relevance of it. I don't know why it was a thing. I didn't know it or care about it. Even when they brought it up, I was actually kind of annoyed because I'm like, it's such a stupid stat to have. So I don't know. Do you think it makes a difference? Like if you score in the first inning, what does that like? Do the stats show that if you score in the first inning, you win the game? I don't know any relevance behind it.
Rob, I think you're being very logical here. Like I think you're being like totally logical in that, it is a 9-inning game. It does make sense. I think the only reason why it's been brought up is because, people are tired of like it highlighted the Jays, overall futility, right? With the bats. That's all it did. And, I think it was just something that must have just stuck out, right? I think if there's going to be a few stats this year that we're going to go, whoa, like what happened there? Like people are going to look back on this season and just wonder what was going on offensively with this team. But I think you're right. Like it is a 9-inning game, and I don't know. Like I think you'd have to look at like, Braves, Phillies, Yankees, Orioles, Dodgers. Like I would think you'd have to look at them. Now, the other thing is that to counter that, generally, in 2024, you put your best players up at the top, and they're usually in the first inning. Like we saw the Dodgers, right? Mookie Betts, Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, and they often score first. So maybe it is a thing, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I don't know. I do think that it's a good point of wondering why it was constantly being brought up and the Jays constantly getting flogged with that stat.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've touched on it there. I think that the only kind of meaningful point that you can squeak out of it is that, the top three guys in your lineup are supposed to be the guys that get her done. And they were failing, in that first opportunity of the game to get it done. That's just it. I mean, you can also say that the pitcher on the other side is also kind of fresh, and they've got their game plan and their best stuff is coming at you in the first inning. So, I think it just maybe tells you just a little bit about those top three guys that we've been throwing out there are just not hitting the ball.
That's kind of like a segue that I was kind of bringing up earlier. I think before we started the podcast about the Jays, and like when I look at the Jays lineup, and I don't want to necessarily go off track, and if we're going to go back on track, let me know, Alex, you can cut me off, but I don't feel the Jays have a number 1, 2, 3, 4 hitters. As much as we look at Bo and Vladdy, to me, I don't think, maybe they don't belong in that lineup. Now, who else do you put on the Jays at the beginning of the lineup? There is nobody else, but I have a feeling that maybe Bo and Vladdy are better suited as like a 5, 6, 7 type of a lineup, like even on the Dodgers, where it would stretch out.
Whoa, that's really low.
Yeah, no.
Well,
like where do you put Kirk then, Rob?
Oh no, I'm not saying. No, I'm not saying. Listen, no, I understand. I'm not saying like there's nobody else you can put up in the 1, 2, and 3. But what I'm saying is, I don't think Bo and Vladdy are number 1, 2. Okay, maybe, but even Flora. That's the fourth position.
I see where you're going with this. Yeah, they're not 1, 2, or 3 hitters on the best teams in baseball. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And I can't argue on that point either.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're not now, but I mean, I think they have the talent to have been that.
Well, they've been doing this for how many years, and it's, they're up and down, but I think the stats are now tilting more towards them not being number 1, 2, or 3 hitters.
I don't think so. I mean, Bo was the hits leader in the league for 2 years in a row. I mean, I know he's had some poor outings here this year, and he's been on a really bad run. But I mean, geez, I don't know.
I know it's a bold statement.
I know. I think the Dodgers would love to have either Bo or Vladdy.
They wouldn't make it in the top 3 though.
Well, no.
There's no way that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette would hit ahead of Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, and Freddie Freeman. Those 3 are literally Hall of Famers.
But that's what I mean.
Okay.
Those are your number 1, 2, 3.
Good. How about the Yankees? Are they going to hit ahead of Soto and Judge and whoever they want to start?
No. That's what I'm saying is you have those guys.
Same as the Orioles.
You have those guys as the number 1, 2, 3, and then you have Bo and Vladdy. If you had them at can you imagine if you had Bo or Vladdy in the number 5 or 6 spot when you have those guys in front of you? Then you're really stretching out those lineup. That's a World Series team. But Bo and Vladdy as a number 1, 2, 3 on the Jays, I don't think it's working. But who else do you put there? The answer is nobody. You don't put Kirk. You don't put Kiermaier. You obviously don't put Springer. My point is the Jays are not the players on the Jays are not a 1, 2, 3, 4 hitters. They just seem to be like a bottom of the order hitters, which is a problem. And maybe that kind of relates back to the step.
No, I would agree with Dustin on the fact that they're not currently. I do think they have, the potential to be otherwise, but I don't know. I think it's hard to argue the fact that if those 2 players who are supposed to be our best players were to be traded to, name a team, they wouldn't be in the top 3 in the Phillies either. They wouldn't
Right.
probably wouldn't be
Yeah.
top 3 on the Braves, not on the Dodgers, not on the Orioles, not on the Yankees.
I think if Bo was prime Bo, or Bo was the best he could be, he would hit second on a lot of those teams.
A lot of teams, but not the best teams, right? Not the best
But yeah,
teams.
some of the best teams, the teams we're talking about, the Dodgers. You don't just put the best, like Bo, having Bo ahead of Ohtani is good. I would want to do that. I put Bo ahead of Ohtani because Bo can get on base. He can slap a ball to left field and he can get on base, and then Ohtani's up and he hits a home run. Right? Like, so it's not just like, oh, Bo's hitting ahead of Ohtani, that means Bo's better than Ohtani. That's not how it works, right? I think if Bo is 2022 Bo, he's second on almost any team in the major leagues. He can hit second.
But it is 2024, Dustin, not 2022.
Yeah, I know. And that's why he's hitting fifth on the Blue Jays or wherever he is.
All right, let's do an IKF wins above replacement update. Before the season, Dustin had a prediction. IKF was going to be a 2-WAR player. Currently, his WAR is 2.2, Dustin. So I think I think IKF's been quite good this year. I don't think I'd hit him in the top 3 or anything, just to close off that discussion. But
no,
2.2 WAR right now, so we're looking good. I did note that his highest WAR that he's ever had, 3.6, 2021. He was with Texas at the time. So yeah, I don't know. IKF, it seems like it's a good signing. I don't know. Like, I still don't think I think people are still kind of underrating it a little bit, like, because IKF's not like a sexy player. Like, again, he hits towards the bottom of the order, but the guy had 5 RBIs on Sunday, was it? So he's playing well, and in terms of whether we'd rather have IKF or Matt Chapman, like, I'm gonna go IKF. Matt Chapman, 236 average. He has a 714 OPS. He has 8 home runs. He's gonna get a hold of a few. But I don't know. I feel like I'd rather have IKF, even though I get IKF's OPS is lower, but he just seems to. I think he's probably just a better fit.
Yeah, I mean, if Matt Chapman was doing, his best, I'd rather have him.
What did Matt Chapman do in 2022, Dustin? That's what we really need to know. Where would 2022 Matt Chapman, be in this lineup, Dustin?
No, I know. I don't know. Just to touch on IKF, I'm glad that my prediction came true, or at least so far. I mean, assuming he doesn't have a negative WAR for the rest of the season, I think I'll take my flowers on that prediction. It turns out to be a pretty good signing. I think, we're not hearing a whole lot of grumblings about IKF that we were hearing at the start of the year. I think, you could make an argument that it would have been better to have somebody with a little more power, a little more pop. That would have been a lot more of a asset to this team comparatively, because as Rob was suggesting earlier in the pod, that IKF is one of a number of guys like him. He's just the most successful one on this team right now. But yeah, it's good to see, and I'm glad he's around, and hopefully he can keep it up.
And he's at 2 years with the Jays, right? This year and next year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 2 years, 15, I think. The Jays are not in last place. They are 4th in the AL East, 33-35 after the series loss versus the Brewers, 485 winning percentage, 14.5 games back from the Yankees, 3 games back of the wild card, as we discussed prior. So the gauntlet that is June rolls on. Cleveland comes into town on Friday. I will actually be at the game on Sunday. I don't know how much of the game I'm going to be watching because I'm going to be there for Father's Day with my kid.
I'll be there on Friday, so.
Let's wrap this up. Dustin, can you plug our social media?
Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at pod S2S, and you can email us at station2pod@gmail.com. Is that right? I think that's right.
That is correct.
Email us there. We'll check it. We'll read it. And yeah.
Answer questions.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining me.